So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Copperfield's Books virtual event with the Writers Forum featuring Joan Gelfand. Joan is here tonight to discuss the 4 C's of successful authors. My name is Jamie Madsen, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at Copperfield's Books, and I'll also be your host for the evening. Copperfield's Books has been committed to literature, education, and creating community together since our founding in 1981. As COVID-19 continues to endanger the future of independent bookstores like us, you can show your support and help keep us alive by purchasing a book through our online store. We thank you for your continued support. I'm also thrilled to announce that all 9 of our store locations are now open for inside service and curbside pickup every day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. A couple of housekeeping items before I introduce Joan. We will be utilizing the chat box to provide links to view upcoming Copperfield's Books events, links for pre-ordering Joan's latest title, as well as links to purchase her previous work, and will also include my contact details for post-event information and follow-up. Additionally, the Q&A box will be your go-to tonight with any questions or comments for the speaker. The format for tonight's event will feature around 45 minutes of speaking and will be followed by a live Q&A. We will try to get to as many of your questions as possible, as your feedback is always welcome. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a Q&A icon. Please submit your questions here rather than replying to my post in the chat box, as this will be more convenient for the following Q&A. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Joan. Joan Gelfand is the author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, You Can Be a Winning Writer, The 4 C's of Successful Authors: Craft, Commitment, Community, and Confidence. Joan's 3 volumes of poetry and chapbook of short fiction have garnered over 20 awards and commendations. Joan's novel, Fear to Shred, set in a Silicon Valley startup, will be published by Mastodon, C&R Press in March 2020, so that just came out. Joan's key publications include Los Angeles Review, Pank, Rattle, Huffington Post, Poetry Flash, Prairie Schooner, Calliope, Meridian Anthology of Contemporary Poetry, Chicken Soup for the Soul, great one, and over 100 lit mags and journals. And with that, I am pleased to hand it over to Joan. Thanks for joining us, Joan.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm thrilled to see that we have a serious core of writers. We have 27 participants on the line. And what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to lay out some of the concepts from my book, You Can Be a Winning Writer. And there will be plenty of time for Q&A. I'm only going to speak for about a half an hour. And so as I'm going through the presentation, what we'll do is if you can make notes of your questions or put them in the chat box, and Jamie will field them and moderate, but we'll try to get to all of them. So here I'm going to share my screen. Let's see right here, and you're going to see the presentation. And here we go. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Where'd that share? Okay. Okay, we need a little tech support here. Let's see what happened.
So we can share it. I think you just have to hit full screen. We can see your screen though.
You can see the screen in the corner.
Yeah, we see your slideshow app up right now.
I've got it on my full screen. Let's see.
Oh, if you go back to that, there we go.
How's that?
That's great.
Okay, good. Okay, so here's the title, obviously. Let's go into the first slide here. So what happened and why I wrote this book is that after I decided to become a full-time writer, I realized that there were a lot of secrets in the writing and publishing world that I hadn't learned after 2 degrees, after getting an English degree with an emphasis in creative writing and a master's degree in fine arts creative writing. And what those concepts are is that it's not just that your craft has to be perfect to submit it and to compete with all the other submissions. And we're talking about whether you're submitting a short story, a poem, an essay, or a full-length manuscript. That there are other things that agents and publishers look for when they look at your submission. And what those things are they're looking to see what your publication history is, what you're doing out in the literary world, and we're going to talk about what it means to be a good literary citizen, and we're going to talk about a few slides down, we're going to talk about what it means to build up what's called a writer's resume. And a writer's resume is the paragraph in your cover letter that tells a publisher and an editor, my work has appeared here, or it will be appearing here. And they want to see that because that's a way of knowing that your work has been vetted by other editors and publishers. So what my concept is that I see your writing career as a stove, and you have 4 burners. And on one burner is your craft. And we are always working at our craft, no matter how many books we have out. We are always trying to get to be better craftspeople, right? We're artists, we're craftspeople, so we're always working on that. But the other burners, people forget about them. And those are commitment to getting published, small things before you send out your book, essays, poems, stories, book reviews. So a commitment to that publishing life that you need to have. Then there's community, which we are going to talk about quite a bit during this presentation, how to build community. And then there's confidence, which it'll be interesting in the Q&A to see what people have to talk about on that topic. I've seen a lack of confidence derail more really excellent writing careers than I care to acknowledge, but it's true. Confidence is really one of those very gray areas that sometimes we don't even know we're operating with a lack of confidence. So in my book, I actually had a PhD therapist talking about how these issues affect us and how we turn away from being successful because of lack of confidence. So we'll be talking about that as we go on. So in commitment, you know, we all have the experience of sending work out, or maybe we have commitment not finishing a project. Let's assume that you have finished your project, that it's either a series of poems you want to send out, or a book of short stories, or even one really great short story, or an essay, or a book review. What does it mean to be committed to getting that work out? Well, when I was first starting out, I thought, you know, if I could sit myself down and get out 3 or 4 submissions of a series of poems or a book review, that was really a lot of work. And what I realized was that it's really a numbers game. And this was one of the things that, you know, was a big revelation to me, that there are authors that will tell you without embarrassment that they had to send their packages for their book proposal or their novel to 50 to 100 publishers and agents before they got a publishing contract. That's a big commitment. It's hard to get those letters. It's hard to get that 30 fifth letter that said that says this isn't for us. So commitment, and one of the things I'd love to talk about in the Q&A is, how do we get support to staying committed? And that's also going to be in the community conversation. Sometimes it is hard to keep ourselves going, but if we have a buddy who's also doing it with us, or if we have a writing coach, it can help to keep our commitment up. So commitment is a big topic. Now, remember what I said in the very beginning about when you submit your packages, there's a letter that reaches out to this editor or publisher, and the first paragraph is about why you want to be in this publication, or why you think this agent is the right agent to represent your book. That's your first paragraph. Then you have a little bit about your work, maybe a paragraph about the poems or about your novel. Keep it very, very short. Then your next paragraph is about what your success has been to date. And as I've said, when you're submitting a full-length book proposal or a novel, those publishers and editors are going to want to see that you have a pretty good track record of publications. And so how do you start if you don't have a track record? Well, what you want to do is you want to kind of go the path of least resistance first, and that is getting published on the internet. There are innumerable online magazines looking for content. That is the easiest place because it doesn't cost a publisher and editor anything to post your poem on their site for a day, and maybe it's up for a few weeks. And then they go and publish another issue. So that's a good place to start. Then, of course, there's small literary journals, and then we move up from there to national journals and nationally recognized publications. But often, most of us have to start with the smaller magazines. I did, and so did everyone else. So don't be shy about that. It's a good way to build your publication history. This is another topic that I'd love to get into more deeply in our Q&A. Rejections, setbacks, starting over. Let's say you are sending out that book proposal and you've sent it out to 20 publishers, and you're sitting there and you say to your spouse or your kids or your partner, or even to your writing friends, well, I think this book doesn't have any legs because I've sent it out 20, 30 times and all I get is rejections. We call that a setback. It doesn't mean that your book doesn't have legs. It doesn't mean that your project doesn't have legs. It means that you have to keep looking for the right person. And sometimes the reason why I say starting over is because sometimes we need a break from that work. We need a break from that punishing task of sending our work out. So, yes, we are all going to get rejected. Here I am, I'm just publishing my 6th book this summer, my novel, and I just sent out 5 poems, my best work from the year. And guess what? I got rejected by all the magazines I sent my poems to. Now that I'm deep into this and I have books, I don't get quite as upset when my rejections come back. It's harder when you're starting, but we all have rejections, we all have setbacks, and we all need to keep starting over if we believe in our projects and our work. Now, this is a topic that for some writers have heard about what it means to build your platform. Some people, it seems a little foreign. So let me just kind of give you the basic concepts. And again, we can go deeper into this in the Q&A. One of the things that, not so much for a small magazine, if you're just publishing a story or a poem or an essay, But if you're publishing, you want to publish a book and you have a book proposal that's making the rounds, or you have a novel that's making the rounds, 9 times out of 10, a publisher or an agent is going to say to you, what is your platform? And you need to know what this is before you send that out so that you have something to say. A platform is all the people and all the groups and all the emails and all the names of folks that you've met throughout your career who are potential buyers of your book, okay? So what that means is your college alumni, your writing groups, writers forum, those are your first lines of defense for your platform. Then it builds up. Are you a member of a national writing group? Are you on the board of maybe a library, or maybe you're on another board where people are interested in your work? Then we go up another level, and that's into your social media platform. Have you built up a Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube? Who is following you, and who can we advertise that you have a new book? Because these are potential, this is your audience. That's the basics of what a platform is. Here's an example of like the ultimate platform. When Barack Obama and Michelle Obama went to sell their books to an agent, they didn't need to talk about their platform, but what their platform is the world, right? They have fans all over the world. Well, we're not, and they got a $6 million book contract. So, you know, they're building up their platform really, really helped their cause. In fact, a little anecdote is that one of the writing groups that I'm associated with, we hosted Maxine Hong Kingston to give a talk. And she said when she received the Medal of Honor from Barack Obama at the White House, he whispered to her, I always wanted to be a writer. So our own president was, you know, an aspiring writer before he got his first book contracts. And he had a serious platform to sell. So, I mean, just so that you understand, that's what a platform is. Who, you know, who is it that you know? Is there something that you do professionally? Are you a world-class soccer player or a brain surgeon who's well-known? That's all your platform, okay? And we'll talk about that if you have questions about that. Community. I am a huge believer and a fan in community. And I will tell you the, you know, Joan Gelfand's success story, and it's actually how I even got this book published. When I was first writing, I had an MFA, I was writing my novel, I was working in private. I thought, well, I'll just get this novel done and get it out and get it to an agent. And the truth was that wasn't the path. Just like I'm telling you, I needed to build up my writer's resume. I needed to build up my community and my platform. Now, why do I emphasize community in my book? Out of my 6 books that are being published, 5 have been through introductions to people that I've met through my literary community. If you want to know, you can ask me in the Q&A, but I think that's a pretty interesting data point that, okay, here's an example just to demystify this. Through one of the writers groups I'm involved with, I met a woman who ran a writing series. I went to read at her open mic, and someone came up to me and said, I love your work. Do you have any more? And I said, well, I have a manuscript looking for a home. And she said, and I have a publisher that's looking for manuscripts. Can you believe that? It's true. So, I mean, putting yourself out in the community, meeting people. Of course, now in COVID, we are stalled in that moment. There's some things going on in Zoom, but of course it's not the same as a face-to-face meeting. I believe that we'll get back to meeting each other in community. But I mean, sometimes even your local librarian can be a huge advocate for you. I walked into my local library branch with my new book, The Winning Writer, and the librarian was so happy to see me and that I was a local writer. She sent it to all her fellow librarians around the San Francisco library system. They bought a bunch of my books. It's circulating. I've done presentations at the library. Little, you know, things that you don't even realize what kind of a connection you can make by just introducing yourself to the right people. For us, community would be what you're doing now with the Writers Forum. Great start, right? Community is your local bookstore, like Copperfield's. Community is meeting up with people at their readings and supporting them at their events, and also letting people in your network know what you're doing. That's building community. Again, let's talk about this more in the Q&A if you have more questions about that. I have a slide here on reciprocity. And this is something, you know, I don't want to feel like a school marm, and it's because it's such a basic tenet of polite behavior, but I like to make a point of it because I think sometimes people forget. If somebody does something nice to you, so let's say here we are, we're talking about community and building your platform. Let's say someone, you know, reaches out to you and says, you know, I really like your book. Would you come in and do an event for my group? Of course, you're flattered and you're going to do your reading and you're going to get to know new people. Are you going to make sure that you thank that person? And the next time you get an opportunity to maybe do them a favor, you can do them a favor. Reciprocity, I feel bad because our current president has made kind of a negative concept out of quid pro quo, because it went around the newspaper or the news as some, you know, some nasty business going around in politics. But quid pro quo is just the concept of, you know, I invited you to do something, or I gave you a good review, or I did you a favor out of the goodness of my heart. Reciprocity is you turn around and try to think what you could do back for the person who's done these kindnesses for you. So don't forget about reciprocity. Developing ambassadors is a different level of networking. I believe in community. I believe in giving back to our literary community. Developing an ambassador is more kind of an advanced idea, but here's the concept. Someone comes along and you're a fan of their work and they're a fan of your work. You promote each other. You, let's say you have a newsletter. You admire this person. You put news in your newsletter about what your colleagues are doing. You make sure that you go to their events. You make sure that you're present for them. And you're doing the same thing back and forth. So it's kind of the whole reciprocity concept, but taken to another level where it's not just one nice thing that someone's going to do for you, but they're actually interested in forwarding your career. They're going to introduce you to the right people. They're going to give you tips on promoting your work or getting the right publicity. These are really incredible colleagues to have, and we need to treat them very respectfully and honor them. And again, happy to talk about that more in our Q&A, but just know that when there's someone out there who really likes your work, there's ways that you can nurture that relationship that are very advantageous to you. And now we're getting toward the end of the presentation. And I think, confidence is one of those really, as I said in the very beginning, kind of a gray area of this whole success story. I will tell you that all of the published writers that I know are very confident. They will go out in the world, they will speak, they will meet people, they're happy to promote their work. Let's go back though to what it is when you're first starting out and how hard it is to be confident when you're not exactly sure if you're going to get published. You're not sure what your book is really going to be about. Well, sometimes confidence could be at the level of, starting a newsletter and building up your email list just to communicate with people that are interested in your topic or what you're doing. I was very shy when I learned that writers had to do a certain amount of self-promotion. I never came from that world. I came from the business world, and I was always happy to promote my business projects, but promoting yourself is a whole other level of taps into some insecurities, especially it's very dicey issue for women who feel like, oh, it's not polite to talk about myself, or it's not polite to bring my own projects into the forefront. Well, it is, and it should be. And there's different ways that you can do it in very polite ways, but there are definitely going to be times when you're going to be out of your comfort zone, and realize that a lot of this publishing journey and becoming a successful author, you will be out of your comfort zone at times. For some of us, just even having that first reading in public is enough to send us into, paroxysms of embarrassment, right? We have to kind of cross all these bridges that are out of our comfort zone if we want to end up in the land of successful authors. So confidence is very, very important. Now, believe me, I'm not encouraging you to be overconfident. So there's a balance there. But let's talk about that in the Q&A. We talked a little bit about promotion, how hard it is to self-promote. There are ways to promote without putting yourself directly out there. Obviously, social media is one of those ways. You can put a lot up on Facebook and Twitter, and sometimes it doesn't feel as personal maybe as when you send out an email and say to your colleagues and followers and friends and family, I'm going to have a new book coming out, or I have a poem in this journal, please read it, please share it. These are things that we tend to be shy about, but it's really important to do, because if you don't do it, no one's going to do it. And it really helps people to know what you're up to, helps people to take you seriously. And so promotion is very, very important. So it can be done in person, through an in-person event, or, in COVID, a Zoom event. It could be a newsletter, it could be an email, it could be social media, it could be writing a post on LinkedIn, or having a blog on Medium or any of the other platforms. Maybe starting your own radio show. I often tell people, it's a great way to get to know writers is to start some kind of a series. Well, that's promoting other writers, but it's also promoting yourself. So there's many ways to promote. Post-publication, I put this in the slides because people don't realize that once their book comes out, there's a whole other world that is open to you. And people think, oh, I worked so hard to get the book out. Well, now it'll do what it'll do and I have nothing to do with it. No, post-publication is very important. You are going to try to get your books reviewed. You're going to try to get your books reviewed on Amazon. You're going to try to submit your book for what we call post-publication awards and prizes. So there's many, many tasks that you can do once your book comes out that are very, very important. And of course, appearances are always important. For the winning writer, at this point, my book has been out almost 2 years. Came out in July 18. And at this point, I've probably done over 50 of these presentations and talks. If you look on my website under my media, you'll see some of the places that the book has been reviewed and covered, and I've been interviewed. These are all things that you can do on your own. You can try. You can hire a book publicist. We can talk about that in our Q&A. But don't forget about post-publication, because once the book comes out, you have to really help to sell that book. So in conclusion, you have 4 C's. You have a burner with you have a stove with 4 burners, and you have craft, commitment, community, and confidence. And my idea is that you are cooking on all of those burners the entire time you're building your writing career. You can't let any of those burners go cold. And that's what it takes to be a winning writer. Find me online. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to all of your questions.
Thanks so much, Joan.
You're welcome.
It's so fantastic that you're here doing this, and I encourage everyone, no matter how silly your question sounds, go ahead and submit it. This is your personal time with Joan Gelfand, and she's tried and true in this arena. And I just thank you so much. For all of you, we will also be sharing her website in the chat box for you to save if you don't get a chance to see it on the screen here. But let's go ahead and get to some questions, because we have quite a few. All right, so the first one here for you, Joan, is I have a 4-book series of cozy mysteries that I've self-published. I'd like to find a publisher to republish them for broader exposure. What is the possibility that that could happen?
Excellent. Great kickoff. Great. Okay. So here's the story with republishing. And first of all, let me say this. You have 2 things in your favor. Very, very strong components of your question. And those are, you have a series. Publishers love series because they love an author that they know are going to write more than 1 book. So that's excellent. You are also working in genre fiction, which is also hugely in your favor. Let me just put out a statistic to everyone. Out of all the book projects that are bought, and I hope this isn't discouraging, but it's just the way it is, 3 times as many non-fiction books are published as fiction. So just so that people know, they're up against a little bit more when you're writing fiction. You know, if you're writing a self-help book, how I made $1 million, how I lost 60 pounds, you know, whatever it's, you know, self-help book, how I survived COVID, you know, whatever it is, your self-help books and nonfiction books, they just sell 3 times as often as fiction. That said, in the fiction arena, if you are working in a genre, and that means romance, thriller, detective, eco fiction, chick lit, or women's fiction. Those are ways that a publisher can package you. They're always looking to put you in a box because they want to know, how am I going to market this person? Okay, that said, here's the ticket for getting a publisher interested in your work. You have to have some numbers to show them. You have to be able to say to them, my first book sold, and I know this is a big number, but it's just kind of the truth, about 2,000 to 3,000 copies. And that is a whole other story about how you build up those numbers. And it's actually something that we may want to talk about offline a little bit, because it's really a whole job in and of itself to get those numbers. But once you cross that threshold of having some serious numbers, you are now in a position to go to a publisher or an agent and say, I have sold 3,000 copies of my books. You will get their attention, but you can't do it until let's just say it's not worth it to try to do it until you've got some serious numbers to show. So again, like I said, if you want to talk more about that, you can ask me some questions on the side, but I think that's a good basic answer there.
I'm so sorry, I was muted talking to myself. Our next question is from Bo, and he's wondering, do you use SEO and how do you do that?
So SEO, are you talking about for someone to find your book, or
yeah,
your
optimization?
Yeah, no, but for the purpose of them finding your website or your book?
It's a good question. There's no specification here.
No specification. Well, I am not a social media specialist. I do know that there are ways that you move up in the search results, and that is by being very active online. So in other words, every time you are mentioned online, or every time you publish something online, that kicks you up in the search engine optimization. There's a science to how to manipulate that in the back, and that really needs to be directed to a social media expert. But I do know that if you have a blog, if you get mentioned online, if you publish on Facebook and get responses, that all moves you up in the search results. I hope that answers at least a basic part of that question.
Great. Our next question is from Kate, and she's wondering, should you still list publications in your cover letter when they are work-related and or in a completely different area, like articles in legal journals?
Yeah, that comes up often. How do I leverage my success in my day job to kind of bolster my creative work? It's kind of a gray area. I wouldn't say that it's a no-no. I think that actually editors and publishers would like to know that you've written for a legal journal or had legal articles, but I would probably lead with my creative work. So you can't rely on it completely. I'm going to take my glasses off for a little bit because I think they're really glary. I'm seeing that they're really glary, and not reading anything. Anyway, I wouldn't nix them from my cover letter, but I would try to have other more literary things kind of as a leader. Yeah.
Great. Rachel has two questions. One of them is on building your platform. If you're new to this, do you have 1 to 2 steps you'd recommend starting with?
Definitely. At this point, I think social media is just how do I say this? Whether we like it or not, a cold, hard fact is that anybody that's going to publish you is going to look at your online presence. Okay, so that means that they're going to try to poke around and they're going to see how often were you mentioned online? What do people say about you online? What does your Twitter account look like? Your Instagram, your Facebook? How many people are following you? So I would definitely say that you should start building up your online presence, no question. And I happen to be a Twitter fan. I know a lot of people aren't. Right now I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'll just give you a very simple tip for building up your numbers. You know, not only does Facebook, Twitter, recommend people for you to follow and to friend, and so does LinkedIn. Take their recommendations. Ask people to follow you and be your friend and do all of that. On Instagram, maybe it's more about following back people that follow you or finding people that you're interested in. But you definitely have to start building up your social media presence. And let me also say this to the group. There are so many teenagers, and I mean like college kids, high school kids. It's like social media to them is their second nature. And you can hire them, you know, especially now. You can say, hey, can you help me build up my social media platform? And they know all these tricks and they know how to do it. So don't hesitate to get the support of a younger person and ask their advice too. So, but there's no question you have to have a social media presence. Yeah.
That's great. Her second question is about post-publication, and she'd love to hear your personal thoughts about what to consider when thinking about hiring a book publicist and why or why not.
Okay, so book publicists can do a lot for you. You have to really vet them and make sure that they've had success with your type of project in the past. They range in expense. You can get a publicist that will promote you locally. Let's say someone who has contacts in the Bay Area, and that's awesome. And those publicists will often be a lot less expensive. If you want a national presence, then you're going to have to look for a publicist that has national contacts, and those people can get a little pricey. So it really depends on your budget, on how you vet these people. Have they worked on projects like yours? Have they had clients that have been happy with them? You know, really important questions to ask. But I'm a huge supporter of hiring a publicist if you can at all afford it, because they're going to have contacts in the literary world that you don't have. So it really made a huge difference the first time I hired a publicist with one of my first books. And I was like, whoa, I should have done this for my very first book. You know, realize that each book is an opportunity for you to move your career forward. And if you get that right review, if you get that right mention in the right magazine, it can be a huge game changer. So it's not just putting out money, it's you know, building up your career.
That was very helpful. The next one is from an anonymous attendee. Does having short articles published in a company newsletter or a volunteer agency members only newsletter really count for anything years later when starting your experience? Or when stating your experience, excuse me.
Let's say this. I don't want to be disrespectful, not of you, but of editors and publishers. And I don't want to be cavalier, but a lot of what's on your cover letter, it's just kind of telegraphing. I know how to play this game. I know what it takes, and I know what you're looking for. You're looking for me to have been vetted, to have been published somewhere before. They're not going to call you up and ask you, what was the date of that publication? You know, that's a feather in your cap. You've had publications. You don't have to go into minutia about it. You just say, you know, I've had articles published in these journals. You know, they're not going to question you on it. It's like when I recommend to people, you know, they're putting a book proposal together. They say, who should I say is what my marketing plan is? I said, we'll make up a marketing plan and we'll put it in the proposal, and it's going to change by the time you get the contract anyway. So, I mean, it's just a matter of, you know, you jump in there, you play the game, and you leverage whatever success you've had. That's for sure. So yes, I'm supporting you. You use all of those credits.
It's great. All right, the next attendee is wondering, well, he says hello, and he's been denied twice for his manuscript. Any advice in staying strong?
Well, for one thing, I would like, so I'm going to assume it's a novel because he's sending out the whole manuscript. For one thing, I would want to look at his cover letter. I would want to make sure that it's really covering all the bases. Cover letters are really critical. I would look at those first few chapters and make sure that they've been properly professionally edited. And I would also say to myself that just a couple of rejections, I'm just at the beginning of my journey. You know, we always say among the poet friends that I have, you know, when your poems come back, we would say to each other, you know, that's an opportunity to look at that poem again and say, you know, maybe I do want to change this. Maybe I want to edit this here. Well, it's the same thing with sending out a package. When that comes back, it's a chance for you to take another look at it and say, maybe I do want to change that first chapter. Maybe I do want to put this in my cover letter where I didn't before. So, you know, it's a process. You know, it's not a stagnant situation. It's a living, breathing process that can be changed. Just because you wrote a query or a cover letter once doesn't mean you can't rewrite it. So, you know, maybe get some advice, ask a few people, how does this sound to you? And keep going.
Great. Our next question is, how specific do you have to be in your writer's resume? Do I need exact dates? I know you've kind of answered this a little bit, but maybe just be very clear for her.
Yeah, definitely. No dates at all. Totally what we would call broad brushstroke. You know, my work was here, it was here, I'm working as a volunteer here. Don't forget that being a literary citizen is also very, very well received on your cover letter. So don't forget, you know, if you teach children to read or volunteer at the library or volunteer for a writers organization, or like Marlene started a writers forum, all those things are really work in your favor. So don't forget to mention all of that too.
Right, so we only have a couple more questions here. If you guys have anything more, we do have some extra time if you want to get them in. This next question is, can you comment on self-publishing small scale, such as going to the printer, making 100 copies and taking to local bookstores? Is that even realistic?
You know, well, that's more of a multifaceted question than you realize. First of all, self-publishing, getting a manuscript printed and giving it to your, or selling it to your friends and family or online, that's respectable. most bookstores will not take self-published work. So that's, don't set yourself up for disappointment. They just have too much to shelve and too many books coming from traditional publishers to manage the administration of managing a self-published book. That said, if you're really tight with your local bookseller and they want to do you a favor, there's a chance that they may feature your book, but it's not a done deal. So I would say, set your expectations correctly. One of the problems with self-publishing books is that you really need to get it into the hands of a few people, what we would call early readers. Make sure it's been proofed properly. Make sure it reads well. Make sure that it makes sense and that it's really in good shape. And if it is, and you feel confident about it, maybe you put it up on an online store. I think you can get self-published books up on Amazon too. So that's a whole other, realm to explore on online, the online selling. Yeah.
And just a quick plug, Copperfield's actually does do events with self-published authors.
Awesome.
We'll do it in a consignment basis. So you'd have to go per store and kind of work it out. And it will just require you to bring your own copies for people to buy. So keep that in mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. This next question is wondering, is e-publishing a good way to start the process? If so, who would you suggest?
Meaning that you just want to have a digital copy of the book, or let's assume that that's what you mean. You just want a digital copy and you don't want a hard copy. Well, I would look at BookBaby. They're a publisher and they help self-publishing people. I would look at Amazon CreateSpace and start there. And then, I wonder if Kindle, if you could just go straight to Kindle, that might be a way to do it too. I'm not sure if Kindle takes any manuscript, but that would be worth exploring.
Awesome. Okay, we're down to the last two. This one's kind of fun. What's the worst, funniest, cringiest mistake you've seen a new writer make when looking to get published?
That's a really interesting question. So here's an interesting study that was done, and I think this is interesting for everyone. There was an article written by a literary editor, and she said that when they liked a person's work, but they weren't quite ready to publish it, and they sent a letter saying, please send us more work. We like your work. We're just not going to publish this piece. That they say that the women don't send work back because they take it as a rejection, but the men immediately send more work. So that is a big mistake that we read. It's not even a criticism. We take too much criticism that's not even directed at us. And I made one of the worst mistakes and I regret it to this day. So here it is, I'll share it with you. I sent out my first book to a New York agent and she sent back a letter that said, you're clearly very talented. I really like this book. The second half isn't working as well for me. Get back to us. I took that manuscript to a very fancy editor. She herself had been a Pulitzer Prize winning author. She trashed my book and I basically never sent it back to that agent. Huge mistake. And, knowing where your advocates are and knowing who will support you and be behind you is really important to know without you second guessing that you're being rejected or that your work is no good. Pursuing any line of interest is very, very important. If you get a letter that says, please send us more work, do send more work. If you get a letter that says, you know, send us your manuscript again, send that manuscript again. So, you know, those kind of mistakes are brutal. I'd say the only other thing is that according to the agents that I talk to, many times writers let their books off their desks before they're ready. So that's why I said to the other person who asked a question, you know, having your book read by colleagues, friends, family, before you send it to a professional, we call those early readers or beta readers or test readers. Sometimes we're shy to ask people, but it's very, very important because you want to make sure that the arc of your book is being understood, that what you're trying to say is being understood. So that would be another mistake. And maybe I'd say in the cover letter, not being very clear about what your book is about and also about why you're approaching a particular agent or publisher. Always very, very critical in your cover letter.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I'm so glad you didn't stop the process.
It was awful. You know, I'll go to my grave with that regret.
Well, we'll keep your secret.
Oh, man.
And just to comment on a previous question, Jolyn has mentioned that Amazon CreateSpace is now KDP Publishing directly through Amazon, and they will take any manuscript. So I shared that in the comments as well, just
Great.
food for thought. So our last question here is from an anonymous attendee, and at 67, I'm finally doing what I've loved all my life by writing. Is it too late?
You know, if I had to say that there was one mantra in the by the way, Jamie's cat is very cute, and Jamie can't see him, but he's going to be a hit of the Copperfields.
Oh,
I'm a cat girl. If there was one mantra in the literary world, it's this: it's all in the writing, and it's hard for us to you know, accept such a simple concept, but it's really true. It's not about your age. It's not about, you know, kind of your presence or, well, you know, it is about your online presence. We do have to say that, you know, they are still going to look at your work, but I know many at your online presence, but I know many authors who are getting published over 65, definitely. And I think it's a matter of, you know, telling the story in the way that, you know, it appeals to a wide audience. That's always something. A lot of times when people start writing in their later years, it's really because they want to tell a story for posterity, but it's not necessarily something for the wider world. So maybe asking some people like, does this interest you? And don't be nice to me. Don't tell me it interests you just because you like me. Would you read a book on this topic? You know, doing a little test marketing never hurts. And so I really recommend, you know, you talking to people and finding out, am I on the right track? Am I not on the right track? Yeah, definitely. But age should not limit you. And I know many people who are getting published at 70. So don't let that be daunting.
This has been so wonderful, Joan. I can't
Thank
thank you enough. I've been already receiving so much positive feedback and many thanks from the attendees. To all of you who did attend, I sent Joan's website in the comments in the chat box. We will also be sending out an email follow-up in 2 days that will include links to purchase. It will have a link to this recording that you can share with others or you can rewatch because there was so much fruitful information in it. And we'll also include further links to Joan's website. Is there anything you wanted to wrap up with, Joan?
Oh, I wanted to make a correction, and it's not your fault. The title of my novel that's coming out is changed to Extreme. It's not Fear to Shred anymore. It was, but the publisher changed it. And the publisher is Blue Light Press. And it's coming out, it didn't come out in March, it's coming out July 14th.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. It actually, Marlene and I communicated about this, and it had shown up in one of her communications also. So maybe there's something on the web. It's not your fault. But I just wanted to correct that. And just to say to people, if they want to send me their email, I'll add them to my email list. I do talks like this. I'll do book launches. And I also do one-to-one coaching with people. And so people can just contact me through my website. So that would be all that I would wrap up with.
That's awesome. And so you said they can get your email address from your website?
Yes, there's a contact sheet. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I would recommend that to all of you.
Well, then they might have to wait in line, but I'll eventually get to them.
It'll keep you busy in this COVID time, right?
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much again. Thank you to everyone who attended. And yeah, be on the lookout for that email, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Jamie, for hosting. It was lovely.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.